why we started this, it was a question that we had been, kind of
grappling with.
Yeah, grappling with, and it's really simple. It's if I knew then what I know now, what would I do differently? So, I mean, Olga and I have known each other for 20 years. It's been
impossible.
It's
Plus,
well, yeah. So we have, I keep saying, Olga is my. I describe her as a hyperconnector. A sister's keeper for sure, and somebody who really is a believer without a doubt. So what we really wanted to do was create a platform for believers or anybody who is trying to find their place in kind of whether it's like moving the trees in shaping this collective that we have, which we can describe as Africa. Africa to us can be a country, but it can also be 54, 55, 56 states, including the African diaspora. So understanding that interconnectedness is really the foundation that we created Arch.
Yeah. And one of our guiding principles is the spirit or philosophy of Afro-Optimism, which we are very excited about, especially with the emergence of this vibrancy across the continent, the culture and creative industry, the tech industry. Everyone's excited about this young population. But for our pilot podcast, our pilot season on the podcast, we started off with, paying tribute and paying homage to the matriarchs. So these are women who they were born in the 60s, so 1962 is when Uganda got independence, and independence. And at that time, these women had to face so many obstacles in their personal lives to be the women that they are. We've already put out 1 episode so far, but I think by the time this viewing there'll be 2 episodes out. I think so.
Okay, slow down.
Yeah. It's Bambi. It's like British, but we're doing it we're doing it like the British miniseries where you know how Sherlock is like 1 hour 30 minutes.
Quality.
3. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Joel.
we
Yeah.
did that.
But it will be like a 5-part featurette. Our intro episode, which is introduction to the African Renaissance and Afro-Optimism, sets us off. And then we have these 4 women that we speak to. You can, if you check out our Instagram, Archex Africa, you know who the 4 women are. So yeah, just go to
Like
It'll be in the comments.
yes, somewhere.
So maybe I'll start by asking a question. I know you guys are supposed to ask me questions,
Yes.
but like a typical man.
Yeah.
What
Yes, Joe.
what is Afro-Optimism?
I think in a nutshell, the most simple way, it's we describe it as a lens in which we see possibilities. We all know that there's this narrative that the continent has had for a very long time, dark, problem-filled, poverty, etc. However, there's also very beautiful things that are percolating across the continent. We've seen it over the years, over the decades, and probably over the centuries. And there's a lot of emphasis now about Africa telling its own stories, redefining the African narrative, and taking full control and shaping our collective future. And it's really based on that premise that we then adopt and really encourage everybody to adopt the philosophy of Afro-Optimism. I describe myself an Afro-Optimist. It's really simple. Do you believe? Are you a believer? And believing can be very many things. Do you see possibilities in places that people have probably considered, done, wasted, completed?
Yeah.
And we see that a lot in our current, I think, in our current space. We hear a lot of there's a renaissance happening, but this time it's not necessarily politically driven, similar to what we saw in the 1960s. Now we are seeing, music, fashion, cultural diplomacy becoming an instrumental tool for African identity to influence and really shape global discourse. So our music is traveling, our fashion is traveling, our mostly our arts, and that soft power becomes a very fascinating ground on which we then collectively build. But going back to what Olga actually said about why we're very fascinated with in our chase to go forward, the future, we found ourselves pulling back to the kind of like the past. And I will reference, let me see, there's a Ghanaian novelist, I think it's called Amakwe. So he published a book, a novel in the 1960s. Now, at that particular time, almost all African nations were freshly new, being born, and the book was called "The Beautiful Ones Are Not Here Yet."
And not yet born.
Yes, are not yet born or are not here yet. Yeah. So what he meant was that even if these new nations are being birthed, the uncorrupted ones to take it forward are not there yet. So it was a very fascinating that the leadership that was taking over from colonial rule did not necessarily have the tool or the consistent belief in shaping the Africa that we wanted to see. For his context, Ghana, but it spilled across almost all the other countries. For a country like South Africa, we see 1994 class, they're called the Born Frees. So his idea was we hope to see an Africa where the beautiful ones, who are the uncorrupted ones, the ones who are not looking for what benefits them. They are looking at how do we go as a collective and build this space. Now you see that same theme featuring in multiple other themes, like Okot Bitek also highlights that, but interestingly they also paint a very colorful, futuristic Africa where, full of opportunities, abundance, and stuff like that. And literature has evolved. We have seen the way African stories have been told, the times, those war images, it's now like Africa, the time is now. The greatest
Africa Rising.
Africa Rising. We begin to see those pieces of language on a global front. But the interesting thing is now we are also seeing an internal percolation. It's not the West validating, it's really within. Coming from within. Yeah. So in that essence, yes, we have our challenges, we have our peculiarities, but there's also beauty in the chaos that even when things are not meant to work, they are for some way working. Young people have chosen to work with what they have to still be able to build, regardless of whether the infrastructure is working in their favor or not. Tech is a big enabler. We talk about leapfrogging a lot, but we have really seen the power of people choosing just to believe, whether you build that app or the theory, educate people. Yeah, it's those little pockets of believers, amidst the noise that become the foundation of Afro-Optimists. And in a nutshell, that's it. That's a mouthful, but I hope that provides some context.
No, I think you've made it like the due homage. I had many questions like ringing in my mind at the time. One is, I remember Malcolm X at some point when they asked him why did he call himself X? And his view at the time was there was a return to Africa. Like let's make sure we go back. And he said, why are you taking me back? I'm a new thing. Of course, this is part of my history, it's part of my story, but the X meant that there is a new thing coming forward. And I don't know how you feel about this, both of you. Sometimes when I would engage with this literature, what I found was a mix of optimism, but also a mix of, I don't know if it's reactionary, but it was like the sense of loss that we had. They say, okay, we got colonized, our lands were taken over, and then we lost something, and now we're trying to reclaim it. But when I speak to the older people in my family, they have a different take on it. One of the things I'm fascinated by was, what did it feel like? Like my father he saw the Union Jack go down. What? And I said, what did it feel for you? And he's like, well, at some point he had mixed feelings because the old ways were also not perfect. Right? But there's something about when you lose it, you look back as if, man, it was pristine and we're okay and we're perfect. So when you talked about looking back, when you look back, what are the things that you kind of are retrieving from our history, from our culture that you think we are going to take forward? But also, how do you, I guess, maybe sieve some of the things that, well, that one I don't think we're going to carry forward?
Yeah, that's a good question, Joel. I think identity, of course, everyone's going through a sort of identity crisis right now. But I think the sense of self There is this, know thyself, right? So what we are trying to question ourselves, on increasingly is, okay, do people truly know who they are, what their origins are? I'm very embarrassed to say that I don't speak my language fluently, but I can hear and respond. I can box. Yeah. The hearing is great, but the response isn't great, right?
Yeah.
It's a concoction of languages to respond. But going back to that cultural identity, can you speak your language? Can you, gather your brethren under a tree, for instance, and come together and try to figure out what needs to be done collectively in order to move the community forward, right? Can you, so I'm just thinking about it in the context of like community, in the context of identifying who, we call them destiny helpers, who in the community can actually help move things forward as we build anew, in the context of building mutual trust. So it's those values essentially. So going back to certain values that were very strong and very key on like building societies, and helping move them forward. So things like communal sharing. I think, right now there's a lot of individualism that's like starting to creep up here and there, and people are very isolated. You could be going through a very, very massive challenge and no one in your friend circle would know, but when it comes time to drink, let's go drink. But you're not you're not like collectively transparently saying, hey, I'm going through this thing and I need my community to help me go through it, right? And of course it's a double-sided coin, because there's also aspects of like things like black tax, which I think is a chip on every, black person's shoulder. But I think it's the way you phrase it. Is it that by me understanding my responsibility and the community having paid my school fees and me having like risen through the ranks in my role to be like, I need to pay it forward in order to build out, my community. So it's those elements, and I think it's by building thyself, right? You're now able to build out the community, build out the nation. There's so many things that in our Kampala we're seeing today that are just very I had to come back to that, right? Which is over the holidays, you see like little kids like selling, bananas by the street, and I'm like, how many bananas do these kids have to sell in order to help them pay school fees? But maybe if there was a way that we could proactively say, knowing what we know, maybe help guide maybe their parents on like coming up with like a circle or something, so that they're able to like save money and they'll be able to pay fees. So it's not as simple as I've phrased it, but I think it's the divorce of like, the problems are too many. I don't see how I can contribute to make that change. But I think it's a reflection of like, if I know who I am, I know my community, then how does that spill over to making things better?
I think for me, building on what Olga's beautifully said, for me it's maybe twofold, but particularly the media, how do we are shaped by what we read, see and hear. That's really what the media space is. So that stories or whatever is presented to you becomes a foundation or truth that you then play with. I've been on a very serious quest for compounded knowledge, and the reason I say that is we hear a lot of Africa, dark continent, you did not document. And for a long time, to be honest, I was like, honestly, there was just nothing probably to be documented. But now, as I kind of dug a bit deeper, I found that it's not that it wasn't documented. The medium in which it was documented was maybe different, right? So our documentation, whether it was oral stories, whether it was in our fashion, our hair, we were sending and documenting in intangible ways. And it hit me really, really hard when my grandmother, she was 106, she died. We are here at her funeral, and she's survived by 500, I don't know, descent, she had like 4 generations. But because she died too old, her people who actually experienced her or knew her were not really there to give us any context. So I know her as my grandmother, but I really don't know her. Yeah. So here we are at her funeral, and apart from the date of birth and the death date, there's like 80 years of someone's life which was just not there. Yeah. And as she was buried, in my mind, I looked at her house and she said, this is someone who has lived on these grounds for 80 years, and now there's like no representation. Yeah. But in my head, I was like, this is a museum. It's my village is it's a museum, and it's intangible. Her stories are buried there, but they were just not written or told. Yeah. And then I started looking at almost the place. So everywhere we walk, sit, play, is actually a living museum. It's just intangible, like what you said about the Kololo Independence Ground. We passed there, it's boring, but in 1962, there was this entire experience, right? So everywhere Pioneer Mall has gone down, but like every place we are in has history pegged to it. It was intangible. So I went on a quest of how do you document the intangible? How do you document a museum of ghosts? That to me is when I realized a lot of African history is intangible.
Shameless plug, please tell us about Telemuseum.
Oh, no.
There we go.
No this girl in 2014 was talking about VR.
Yeah, that's where it began, because for me, I was like, how do you document the intangible? And the medium that we have right now did not necessarily allow us to have the full multi-sensory immersive experience. Like I can have a video, but I can't go into the video, I can't relive it. It's recorded static based on time, it's locked to time and space. If I go to the Ugandan Museum, it's also locked to time and space. The space can only accommodate a certain number of objects, and it can only live in a particular place. While it has kind of memorial history of pieces of things, it's not going to capture my family's history. I can't find that in the Uganda Museum. When you go, however, and that's the beauty of kingdoms, and that's how Britain has been able to really sell itself. These guys, and Buganda Kingdom has done it. It has 900 years of history. Like the Sons, it traces it now. It has about 900 years. So when you go to the palace of, the Buckingham Palace, you'll find they have 900 years of photographic representation of their ancestors. You said we don't have photographs of our. Now I don't have photographs of my grandmother. I don't know what she. Okay.
He was going to make a point. Alan, say what you want
to say. Yes.
Sorry for cutting you short. But I think I attended the funeral of one of my grandfathers, who was like rich, his daughters and like government and what, but there was no picture. Like they got a picture, it was at some wedding and stuff, and that was the picture. And so like I pitched to them, like, how about take a drive to the village? It's a bit morbid, but take pictures of all the old people there, so that in case they die, there's like at least a picture. You can be
brilliant.
Like,
exactly. And even as
that's why I have my Instagram account. Who win my film?
Oh wow! Now that's the beauty, and I think that's the beauty of digital footprint. Is that it allows there's also having a static picture and say, oh, this one. But do we know our parents? Do you know their favorite food, their favorite color? What were they doing on 14th February 19? I do not know. We know them as our parents, but the kind of like granular level is almost, you hear things from people and you're like, that's my father, you're very unfamiliar. Digital has allowed us to get into the mind, this is what Olga was thinking on this particular day, and that becomes an archive of the mind of Olga. And that's the part which beyond the accolades, we can describe your career and stuff, but the person, who the person was. So I was really fascinated with how do we document the intangible, and for me, it was that's when I was tinkering with, is there such a thing as a virtual reality? I was in way before it came, kind of public, and I was like, that is exactly
before Mark tried to sell it to us. It was, you get to the metaverse.
Yeah. So it was exactly that. Can I go back? I think it was can I time travel? And film has allowed us to get a lot of that. But can I time travel to 1960? And the Kololo thing is very, because if you see the videos, BBC did some really fantastic job documenting that. So if somebody stands there today at 8 p.m. and immerses, you're hearing the sound, you're looking around, and you think this is, women were in Gomesi. It was a whole experience that you will not get. It's immersive, you won't get necessarily in a film. So I went down that path of exploring virtual worlds. And that's really, if she's talking about telemuseum, that's how it
there's
emerged,
Well, there's a thought process now. I've been really immersed in it myself. It's called the reality of the virtual. And it's based on, I guess, the psychoanalytic form of the way we think is, there's the imaginary, so like the way we see things, feel them, like the things that are most immediate. Then there's the symbolic, like what does something mean? When I see a certain sign, it conveys information more than what is standing there. But then there's a third element, which is the real. And the real is like an intrusion, the thing that you cannot symbolize, the thing that never comes together. And it shows up in either when you've had a traumatic experience, and when trauma comes, it means that you can't incorporate it into your understanding of the world. And as you were talking, the argument there is that we already have a virtual reality around us. Like when I'm looking at you, it's not that there is an unobscured vision that there are histories. There's what I think about when I look at a woman. There's when someone is speaking a certain way. I mean, earlier we were talking about how one of your workmates was saying, "But you're Ugandan, how can you be earning that much?" At that point, there's always something added. And the example that I really liked was from video games and from like Pokemon. Because like with Pokemon, you're running around in real life, shall we say, but you're looking for something. There's an added ingredient to the element of life. So I guess the question what I got from what you were saying is almost that we extract the values, but the values can be expressed in different ways. I feel like I carry on the tradition of my family, but in a different setting. Like my great-grandfather was mining for salt. So there are some ways in which if he came back and saw me living the way he's living, he would say, "What's wrong with you?" And I think that we have a unique task in that when you're talking about the ones who are not yet born, I feel that sometimes we how can I say it? It's very hard to say that I am creating something new that is going to last. But everything that is lasting now was created by someone. So I think, I don't know what you're thinking about this, but when I was hearing you speak, it's almost like the task for this generation is almost to now define anew, to create with the ways that we are going to be doing stuff. But it's also a leap of faith, because it's only in 100 years, 200 years that people will look back and say, those guys set a new bar, or they set us down this path. But that sounds like a very heavy duty. So do you feel like it's a burden? Is it a privilege? Sometimes do you get depressed? Do you feel like you talked about Afro-Optimism, which I would think is coming in the face of Afro-Pessimism. And for me, I find it distasteful a lot of the time when I'm reading otherwise very intelligent people. It's usually the most intelligent, the most fortunate amongst us who are saying things like, not gonna make it, low IQ population. Like when I hear things like that, I feel like, one, I try not to over psychoanalyze them, because I feel like there is some benefit in you saying everyone else who's like this is not well, but I'm the exception, and I'm exceptional compared to them. But that narrative, it finds ready homes. Like what you're saying now, people say, it sounds good, but then they go back to the baseline. So I'm just wondering, how do you keep that optimism going, and then how do you not, we're calling it delulu. How do you not fall into delusion? How do you keep that passion, that fire going, and how do you create that spark in other people, and how do you keep that spark within yourself?
I think you said so. Daniel, I don't know if it's a shameless plug for Daniel Kaluuya. I don't know him, but he was on Jay Shetty's podcast, and he said the difference between delusion and faith is God. So, and sometimes I think you have to almost be delusional to a point of, okay, with everything that's happening around me, what is it that I want to create for the future? So the delusion gets you to a certain point, but I think the faith sustains you to keep going. And I think like for us, it's really about exploring the possibilities, because we've seen. By seeing, you're like, okay, I had the opportunity to do some work in Lagos. Lagos is a very interesting place. Nigeria itself is a very interesting country, but in Lagos, the heartbeat of entrepreneurship, the heartbeat of economic productivity in the midst of chaos. It is chaotic, but people get things done. The light goes off. There's a generator, someone standby. It, because the power keeps on going on and off. Generator is also going on, off. People's devices die. People buy a new device because they understand that this thing has to work, or it has to work. So I think it's almost having that delusion to get you to a certain point and faith to sustain you. But like I'm also a believer, Christian. So sometimes
Sorry, I'm kidding.
yes, Joe.
Please go ahead.
I'm one of them.
We're all Christians.
One of
All us.
oh wow.
Yeah. So it's that like faith, knowing that.
Why are you laughing?
I am here
Continue.
for. I laugh.
You know he's a Musumba.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, please.
Pastor Alan.
I am. I explain. I have a whole episode.
Pastor.
Wow.
Yeah. Musumba Alan.
Okay.
A cult leader.
Not for a church, for a group of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a cult.
He's a shepherd.
It's a cult.
I mean, the lead. Okay.
I mean, religion, cult.
But you said something
yeah.
along the lines of
Yeah.
there's a difference between delusion and faith.
Yes, the difference between delusion and faith is God, right? So knowing that I'm here for a certain period of time and understanding that there is a purpose that I need to fulfill. So even the way I talk to God, I'm like, bruh, I'm here for a limited period of time. I need these resources. I need to meet these people to get things done. So I think for me, it's that resting on that, knowing that I have a purpose to fulfill. And almost, a point of delusion, like I said, delusion, then faith. So knowing that everything that I'm doing is going to work out. The people that I'm going to meet, I'm either going to help change their lives or they're going to help change mine, right? So that's that's what keeps me going. And, working with Lorna, who's equally as delusional. Because this I think it's very easy to complain about your problems. The problems are everywhere, I mean.
Oh yes. And blame it to someone else.
And blame it on someone else.
Yeah.
But I think you also have to take responsibility in like, okay, if we're solving this problem, what is it that I can do?
Yeah.
Where do I find the people that have this same delusional mindset to do it?
Yeah.
And what do we need to get done? And just like block out that noise, right? Yeah. That is for me as me.
For you as you. For me, honestly, I'll comment on something that you said about the Afro-pessimism, Afro-pessimism. And interestingly, I think pessimists are just frustrated optimists.
Of course.
Yeah, they're just like, guys, they are believers, they're just frustrated. That means it just takes a little bit for them too, because they probably see they're just frustrated. So they still become.
Things shouldn't be like this.
Yeah, they are frustrated Afro-optimists. So it's just the same. We come back full circle. But anyway, coming back to, is this a burden? Is this, do we even have the capacity to do this? I mean, I think we are the ones who've been waiting for. I think at the end of the day, we are, I keep saying we are a remix of our ancestors. We compound, knowledge is compounded. Like the generations after will always be better I hope so.
I hope.
Than the generations before, and that's how knowledge, that's how humanity has been able to, live to this day. But going back to that, for me, I think there's a quote Albert Einstein says that every day I wake up and I remind myself, this is by the Albert. So every day I wake up, he says, every day I wake up and I remind myself that my inner and outer life are a result, and my privileges are a result of the blood, sweat, and tears of the men and women, both dead and alive, those who came before us, to allow us enjoy some of the things that we are enjoying today. And therefore, I must exert myself in equal measure to give and continue to receive as I have always. And it goes back to when we talk about women. I will use the women, for example. Where we are now, we are really, really a result of people who blood and sweat for us to be able to get education. It's less than 100, it's like 100 years. The suffragettes are fighting for women's rights to vote. Now we can, take that for granted, but it's not even less than 100 years ago.
It's a microsecond in the history of humanity.
Absolutely. We were speaking to, and even like looking at education as it is. Today, you can walk away with a degree. 50 years ago, Mary Stuart had, 3, I don't know how, they had this portrait of, I do not know how few women. And it's fascinating because even the Queen of England did not have a university degree. And I think it's her granddaughter, there's one of the two girls. They're the first girls to have a university degree, and this is the Queen of England who has really access, because even their training was that you were supposed to be trained along the languages so that you could, be decent enough to,
colonize the world.
Not even colonize, because she accidentally took over from her dad, but so that you could probably be a queen married to somebody else. So you were trained to have the, kind of like the panache for nobility. So
Panache.
Is it no? Yeah. For the.
I just want you to say it again.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it again. So you had to definitely have that, know the different languages, so that you could be able. But the core education, you were not. But if you look at the children, her sons, the Oxbridges were designed for the boys, right? But the girls didn't even have the opportunity to do that. So when we take some of the things for granted where we are, but there were people who, we interviewed on the late Honorable Cecilia Ogwal, and she had a hunger strike when she was 6 years old in her school, because and then she had another strike because they refused for a girl to participate in a mathematics contest, and because of the strike, she had to do it, and she topped her district, and the story after that has been, magical after that. But we are riding on the shoulders of greatness, and I keep saying we have to exert ourselves in equal measure. We may not necessarily be, it's blood and sweat involved, but the generation coming after us should have it better. I'm really hoping that the generation coming after us, I will call them the beautiful ones or the restful ones who don't have to question.
The Gen Zs with soft life.
Yeah, like they don't have to question, you walk into a space and you question your color, is it
your gender,
it's your woman, or, as women in
women in tech.
I know, like women in tech.
Women in tech.
No. Women in tech. Yes, we are women in tech. Here, this you're going to say this is very Afro-pessimist. But I think we are being a woman today. A woman, a black woman, a woman in tech. It's like having a disability, right? Because you really have to. The systems were just really not designed for you to be included. So I guess that's also the part. But I also feel that we were very lucky. I think, Olga, we always talk about how lucky we are, because we continue to find ourselves in places that remind us that there is a place for, you can call it delusional people or rebels or people who choose to push the to kind of like push the boundaries. But we also, my first experience with it is not possible was in university. We were in a utopia in our high school where you were told the world is your oyster. So we were never, conditioned to believe that, there's something that we couldn't do because that's how we were trained. And I keep saying, by the way, that naivety is something that I see a lot. It continues a lot, this reckless optimism that the world is actually your oyster. There's no bad, there's like...
It's detached from material circumstance.
Yeah, there's that. So maybe that has also helped, that I don't necessarily feel like it's a burden, because we've also been incredibly lucky that we find ourselves connecting with people who vibrate at that same frequency. Okay. So that's where, but it's a task. It's a task that has to be done, or the generation after us will wonder why we failed them.
Yeah.
If people wanted to, they've been ignited by what you've said now,
right?
Like for me, I'm always on fire.
It's okay, so like
I'm on fire.
Yeah. So sorry, Joel, to interrupt you. Like yesterday, we were having a conversation about the unpacking PLE performance across districts, which is another conversation.
Why do they put them in newspapers still? I know at a time it was, maybe you needed to know, because how else are you going to get the information?
No, you need to know.
But now I'm like, why are they putting? I find it very ideological that it's this was the first girl, she got 4 points, you too can be here, and then there's a grading of the schools, and then there's like it's very mixed in
you
with
too
business,
can be here.
And I'm just like, you guys, what the
you too, it's like
you too can have
because it was always used as, it's like when parents tell us, oh, me, I was the first. I think they're all hiding. I'm like, I wish I could see what you're actually doing, because as I've grown old and I've found, our parents, it's a weird thing that you're saying. I think we see them in their roles. We see them as the symbolic of, this is my mother. So when I said my mom, I am talking about how she relates to me. I'm not seeing her as a woman, as a child, as a worker, and in all those foibles and all those things, it has actually helped me to forgive her for certain things I thought she couldn't give me, because at that time I was just seeing you as perform your role, and then other things change. So I sometimes see that when those messages that are put forward, I understand it's to create, like what you said, create optimism and hope in people.
It's possible.
But at a certain point, if you overindulge on that and then you hit a crisis, or I think that's where the pessimism comes in. Someone gets disappointed because they thought, man, my willpower. It's like I don't know if you guys read The Secret.
We watched.
First of all, I'm sorry, someone got me a copy of The Secret. I read it, and I was reading it like this. Huh? Like, I understood what they were trying to get to, but I feel like, this is going to sound very abstract. I feel like it's very hard for you to center yourself, but if you have some authority center you, it's very comfortable. So if you go, the universe is working for
you,
me. It's very easy for me to now occupy this space, because that part of you that goes, hey, first wait, aren't you the same as everyone else? You're like, no, but the universe is the one that's telling me that I'm powerful, so I can manifest what's happening. But the thing that was interesting for me was, it was about you. It was saying the whole universe is here for you. Even in church, I understand what it means when they say, Jesus would have died if only for you. I think that can go in the wrong direction, because it then just becomes, it's all about me. The world features in my story. All of you are kind of part of my narrative. And I suppose why I'm saying that, I wanted to find out how can people get into reading the things that you've read, exposing themselves to that, because what I'm hearing as a thread in what you're talking about is, it's not enough for you to be enlightened, for you to go, well, I've sparked it, but that for the bush to get on fire, you need to get other pieces of things on fire, and you need to ignite other individuals. So I guess that's why I was curious about how you found each other. You're sort of keeping the fire going, but how do people find people who they can? Yeah, because you're easily surrounded by guys who are going to tell you, and what are you talking about? You're just yapping. This thing's African Rising. That just ended a long time ago. So that's why I was curious.
That's
I think for me it goes back to what Olga said earlier. Know thyself. I think when you know who you are, and it's when I don't have the ability to rip yourself apart to be able to build yourself, and then be able to, I don't even have the terminology for that, but like your validation or your sense of self is not external. Now, it doesn't come from outside. Now, a lot of people, again, status, that's why we're all craving status symbols, we're struggling with all this anxiety. It's because we want to be liked and accepted. I think we are all looking for this sense of belonging, and that's why communities are born, and that's how we thrive. However, I think there is a place for, when you know who you are, when you can be an independent entity and recognize the collective. So it's not a conditioning that we should, they say all communities that you have there's a
theme as to why
there has to be a shared
some
value.
creed,
There has to be some kind of shared value, and I don't think you really need. I think what I found very fascinating is figuring out what that value is, because when you know my value, then I have the grace and appreciation to recognize Olga's value without trying to get Olga to.
You don't have to be exactly like me, and I also am not threatened.
I'm not threatened. Yeah, and I can recognize the independence in the collective. Now, when you have those people, and I think that's why people are frustrated with rebels or artists. I use artists because artists usually they have done a lot of self, and they come off as free beings. So people fear the person who comes off as a free body, because
spirit.
A free spirit. It's a bit frustrating because how come you're free?
Yeah.
Why? I understand the work you've had to do. My mind is pointing me in too many directions, but it's this whole thing of self-discovery. I think people go on this journey of self-discovery. Everyone does, but do you like who you find? So most people don't like who they find, and they say, please, whoever that person is, I can't reveal you to the world. Let us just
put you back in
please, let's just fall back to normality, and let's fit in, right? So anyone who has walked on that self-discovery journey and has been able to find that, this is the Lorna, but do I really like the Lorna? Will the world like the Lorna? And therefore I fall back to assimilate, because I know that maybe the world will not like Lorna. So we become frustrated when we see people who have broken out of their shell and look like they are free, and then we're like, I want your freedom, but I don't want to do the work because it's lonely over there. Now, when it's lonely over there, I think the loners, my name, the loners.
Oh, let's cancel the podcast.
The loners. That's the thing. I figured that the loner, L-O-N-E-Rs. That you have to, unfortunately, be a lone ranger to be able to recognize the fire in other people, and then
Say that again.
I think you have to be able to be a lone ranger to be able to recognize the fire in other people without thinking it's competition. Like let your light. I can find your light.
Your light will shine.
I am all for looking
and you're not threatened.
Exactly. Like it's your light. It's your light. And now when we begin to. And now when you have your light, you can recognize someone else's light without trying to curate them.
Have you recognized my light?
What is your light?
When a funnier person joins the group.
I hate you.
So anyway, I'm digressing, but the point, I'm taking us in a very different direction, but that's the point is, when you have those lights, then those lights form a community who recognize your tiny role in this bigger complex systems thinking, really. That butterfly, the tsunami, that's what happens. But it needs, is it Pascal? Is it Dirac? I don't know, the guy who said that if you pluck a petal on Earth, it shifts a planet, it shifts a planet, I don't know, one of those bodies. So that is, now if that's one petal, so the way we are all we are connected in a way, but we find ourselves looking at everybody as either competition or, you know, but if you've done the groundwork, then you're in position to recognize. And I keep saying, I'm a lover of beautiful things. I see beauty everywhere. And it's really because Olga's light is very different from Joel's life. And it can never be the same.
That's right.
But trying to, guys, this is the standard procedure in this house, this is how we operate. And that's why you find there are outcasts, the rebels who break out because they're like, I don't fit in the tribe. So then those rebels, who are those lone rangers, find themselves and aggregate. And those are the people. And that's what we really want to do. Because everybody has that ability. And then we have the butterfly effect. Because it's not me going to shift everything. It's I recognize that I am a tiny bit in the bigger puzzle, but then there are thousands of millions and billions of tiny bits who need to vibrate at the same frequency, hit resonate frequency, and everything busts. And that's really basically
how you start a movement.
That's it. That's how I look at it.
Please, there's only one movement in this country.
Archers!
Anyway. One last question from me. Why did you call it Arch? Why did you choose a podcast? Why is it that you're featuring all of this? And if you could speak to someone who's been trying to get out there, you know, venture, because it's easy to be in your room and think all these nice things, but it's a different thing to put yourself on stage or to put yourself out there. Could you just maybe talk about why you're doing what you're doing now, and what would you say to someone who's thinking about you know, stepping out there and doing something?
Okay. Why is it called Arch? If you watch the opening montage of our AI generated opening trailer.
It's going to hit all the words.
Innovative
AI.
Innovative AI. We really thank generative
Silicon
AI
Savannah.
for those images.
Or giraffe or rhino.
It's in our opening montage. Should we give it away now?
Please do.
Okay.
That's very special.
Okay. So Arch stands for the symbolism of an arch or arch in a house. It's a passage, right? So the architectural people know that when you build an arch in a building, it's a passage where you can like go through from one room to another. So it's a sort of like a transition.
Heaven's gates.
Well, transition.
Element has flames, you know. So don't just bring the one
Not
without
the one side,
Don't make this
You take about putting people on fire, spark it. Well, the devil is come.
Wow. I never imagined the gates of hell. I don't even know what it looks like, but I know there's like an arch.
And
the colorness of light and stuff, but anyway, go on.
Very bright.
Bright.
It's hot.
Let's keep going. And also because arch is so as it's a if you use it as a you can use it as a prefix and use it as a suffix. So
What is suffix?
Twice science.
I'm sorry, I've changed.
So like most of the words that it's affiliated to are leadership. So archbishop, matriarch, patriarch. Archetype, different, types of people, architect, building,
archer,
archer as well.
Archbombola.
But I think Lorna didn't like that name at the start, so she's like, let me go think about it deeper, because there was
a lot of banter on a particular topic, and I didn't think about it. It actually, we were just hold this African Renaissance.
Yes.
What do we need? And then I was like, no, but you need courage and hope.
Courage.
That's it.
So
and then that's just how. But the arch was already set. It's just that. Then in our unpacking of the African Renaissance, like, no, what we're looking for is courage, because it takes a lot of courage to become that lone ranger, to be able to return to the park. And then hope is just to believe. If you can believe, then you're hopeful. And I think that, to me, then summarizes what then arch represents. And it's as Olga said, it's like the matriarchs. It's our newsletter is archiving Africa, representing the documentation, the historical lens in which we see the future. But anyway, I'm interrupting.
Yeah.
Continue. How do people
Natural
find
flows,
it?
I think
So-
you
How
actually-
do
you
how do
exemplified why you work
people
together.
how do people get
Yeah. So
Start their own
Instagram to start their own arc. So right now we are setting the foundation because we believe in the power of community, right? So again, going back to actualizing your purpose through content, coaching, community. The content side, I think, speaks for itself. Lorna talked about the power of media and what people are watching, what people are seeing is essentially what they'll become. Well, it influences what they become. But what do we want people to see? What do we want people to hear? And what do we want to influence them to become? So for our, as I said, pilot season, being the matriarchs, it's really paying homage to these women. But we want to unpack other topics. We want to unpack topics around, beauty in Africa. But speak about it from...
I'm a fan. Sorry, I love myself.
He likes everything.
Beautiful African woman.
Yeah. Beauty in Africa, what does that actually mean, right?
Sorry. Distracting.
Talking about women who've built product services around addressing climate change. Women who have played a critical role in financial services as well. So like the history or evolution of money, but more from women who have built solutions, either working in fintech very early days, seeing this evolution occur from
Colorations.
not commercials,
Butter chick.
not as far back, not as far back, not
we
that
need
far.
to give that butter chick.
Continue. That will be episode zero
this is
of
now
that.
episode-
Seeing behind the scenes of how things are
That's
done. We are
episode
seeing.
zero of that particular piece. But also trying to create a future because we want to see how to create animations and like movies, featurettes around how we see the future. So
Documentation. I think that's also a big part of it,
Yeah.
And also building on what Olga said is we, as you said, the noise of Afro-pessimism is louder. That sometimes you find, I'm sure there are so many people who believe that there's something they can do or they want something better for either themselves or by extension, the generations after them. But then because of, again, we are shaped by what we hear, read, and you begin to accept that maybe I'm chasing the wind, maybe I'm crazy, maybe let's just, this is not something I can, possibly do, and then I just fall back. So there's lots of frustrated conversations that we hear, especially people who are in their late, I think in their 30s into their 40s, because they have, they're at that point in their career where they have, what's happening?
Joel is in a
transition.
He's in a transition.
No, it's like the same group.
Yeah,
So I think there's this group that has, done the work. They have accumulated some, kind of like resources, but they recognize that there is more, and there is that actualization or realization that people call it a midlife crisis, but there are people who are like, is this all? Is this all? So there's that group that's saying, is this really it? And we hear a lot of those conversations, but because of the noise, you can easily accept that maybe that's not for a Ugandan girl. Maybe that's not for a maybe it's for people who are in Silicon Valley, or it's a Harvard thing. It's too far away. And why we find ourselves also escaping from this kind of noise is there is a conditioning that if you're in Uganda long enough, you will begin, there are certain things like expectations, societal things that the friend groups are doing, investing in the same business. Anyway, the dreams are almost shared.
50 by 100. You can't say it.
Okay, no. So they're like shared dreams. But then if I step, as she said, Nigeria, our peers, the conversations they're having are different. So I realized it's a positioning thing, it's a placement thing. In fact, one of my mentors, when we were still in uni, one of the girls she was, the collective she was mentoring said, people like, oh no, now that I've studied, I will not be able to find a husband in Kenya. And she said, if that's the problem, we will move you to where you will find people who will not be frustrated by you. But when you live in that space, you begin to think this is all. But the world is your oyster. So I think for us, we recognize that there's that group, and we want to just create safe space.
A movement.
A place,
movement,
a canvas of dialogue. Nobody is telling you what to do, but it's really a canvas of dialogue for that particular group that truly believe or are restless. The restless ones. Because deep inside they know there is something more as we build towards the restful ones who will be born. That's really what it is, I think.
We're also using the power of books, because we have a partnership with Mahiri Books.
Mahiri Books, yes.
Yeah, so building that reading culture to escort and accompany like the content that we put out.
First principles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he's thinking.
What? Not her.
No, like first and zero principle thinking. It goes back to the thing about values.
Yeah.
Is where you ground yourself, because most people also don't. They may know it but not able to articulate it. So so that's also very important. First principle, zero principle thinking, to allow you then build your mental blocks, and then how you view the world, and then how you can contribute. So bottom up. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Go ahead.
As the only father who is here.
Excuse
Oh
me.
wow! Okay.
Oh wow!
Someone calls me that.
Forgive me if I'm a bit.
It's not that kind of podcast.
Forgive me if I'm a bit. What can I say? This is not how it used to be before, but now I'm very cautious on what the future generation kind of thinks, because we may be so hell-bent into reminding them about the past, building them right now in the current, and also maybe like fostering what they'll be in the future, but maybe that's not what they want. Because you introduced me to Dian Vimal, the Indian master, who have really got deep
You're now
into.
listening to the guy a lot.
Yeah, subscribe to all these things.
Yeah.
He talks about happiness, on how we just need to let the young people be happy. Because, I mean, what have we done? Our greatest minds created nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
People who dug deep into who they are, I mean, that's where we get Hitler from, and who and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe as we do this, and you talked about like adding their voices into, which I think is very important, like having the younger generation into we think this, but also get their perspective on yes, I mean, like you are part of the struggle, you are the majors, the generals, all these guys who fought, but it's not a time of peace.
Yes.
Like, yes, women couldn't do this, they
Yes.
couldn't do this, but now it's a time of peace.
Yes.
Women they can become
Yes.
presidents, they can do this, they can write books, they can, like, how do we understand the times when there is now peace? And how do we help maybe push to what's next? But someone said after peace, it's liberation, right?
It's a liberation.
Because you can be
but,
peaceful, but we
Not
are...
liberated.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe liberation is
Like the thing you were
step.
saying, I wonder about it, because when I was going to uni, I had this thing that, my dad is going to want me to do this, and I picked my course because of him. And then he said, I'm not going to live your life. And probably the best gift he gave me, this also reflects in my belief in, well, some people think it's a heretical Christian belief, but I think that we constantly want to have someone telling us where we're going to go.
Yeah.
And the best gift, this is my interpretation, it might not be what you guys have. I think the gift that we can give the people who are coming after us is, we fought our battle, this is what we've learned, but you decide where you're going to go. Because I didn't have the burden, I didn't have the burden of having to live up to his expectations. And yet they were high. In fact, I put those expectations into him. I said, he's going to expect me to become an engineer, he's going to expect me to do this and all of that. And when I achieved those things, and I came saying, are you proud? He said, I was proud of who you were already. The rest was gravy. That, first of all, that was the one day I was about to weep. I was like, I've been pushing myself with this burden to try and get somewhere, and yet when it was taken off of me, there was also the fear, and that fear was, who am I now? Because I think sometimes we identify even the pessimist thing, at least you know who you are. Even if someone says you're a bastard, you're like, at least I'm a bastard, I know who I am. But then if you have to create yourself, it's such a crazy thing, and you sort of mentioned it as finding yourself. I always look at it as creating yourself. Like as I do things, as I explore, I start to look back and say, I've now become this person. And I think that's quite a hopeful message. There's I think St. Augustine said something along the lines of hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. So you have to first get angry and say things shouldn't be this way. But then courage takes you the step of doing something. And perhaps what you've captured and what I'm hearing is that a lot of us are stuck on anger. We're stuck on distaste, and that you usually have to drown out. Either you distract yourself with it, or you convert it into irony. You make mockeries. But courage, it takes courage to be sincere. It takes courage to actually believe in something, to actually move. And to me, anytime I hear that, I'm really impressed. So I'm really, you guys have made my day.
Thank you, Joel. And Joel, thank you so much, because as we're trying to come up with what this thing was, you were one of the people that we spoke to. And you gave such great insight into, because we're trying to get into the content creator game from our stable jobs. But I think you giving us that push of you start and you see what happens, right? It was, we appreciate that.
And I mean, courage, she got away from the background.
Yeah.
I mean, and
she's a real person. She's not a hologram.
Like that question you asked, and we talked about the generational mandate. Because that's what you are alluding to, that each we are not telling them how they should live, but we need to give them the
tools,
infrastructure to be able to thrive in the way that they choose to thrive. But if there is no infrastructure, then what they have to do is go back in time and try and build those enabling frameworks and do the work we should have done, so we would have robbed them a whole, and I think that's where we find ourselves. We are fixing problems of 40 years ago. The 1986 class found them, Uganda, 1962, we were liberated. However, a new liberation, between then and 86, that's over 20 years later, 25 years later, they are trying to do the job of 1962. Class of, here we are.
90.
Class
of 90,
okay, where we are now.
No.
This group, now our generation, is frustrated because we can't necessarily build forward because there is, we just have to go back. We have to go back, build basic things for us to even be able to move forward. And that's why I might keep arguing of why futurism becomes a very important body of study, of why we can dedicate 75% to focus on today's most pressing issues: jobs, homelessness, hunger, poverty, disease. We need to allocate or train at 25% who spend their time anticipating and building for that generation forward, so that that generation that comes continues. They are not coming back to fix
problems.
So that's why I was very fascinated. What is our generation's mandate, and what do you think the generation we handle? We've done our part, guys. What is your mandate? Because that to me is where we find ourselves today.
But maybe to the point of where is the current generation, well, the younger generation, actually feeding itself from? It's external. So, social media really dictates the way Gen Z lives their lives. And I think there is this disconnect between the reality that we are here now, Uganda or Africa, trying to fix certain things, versus them seeing Kim Kardashian and saying, I want to aspire to be Kim Kardashian, right? So I think it's about, as you said, giving them the right infrastructure and tools to, I'm not going to say, let me rephrase the question. Kim is a businesswoman. I actually respect that business has a side of, right? But what are the things that they can learn from who they are looking
who Kim
to?
Is or who?
No, not in the sense of what really Kim, but the business aspect, for instance, right? Because there's kids who are actually starting businesses. There's Gen Zs who are doing the whole influencer hustle. Admire that, but sometimes I see the content and I'm a bit how do we guide it in a productive way? right? In a productive and helpful way. Yeah. So that's the tools and infrastructure to guide and nurture them.
So what's our generation's mandate?
It's a good
And remember,
what?
Gen Zs, honestly, I bundle them as our generation.
Do you?
I think so. Because I would put our I think the next generation become your children. There has to be
Gen Alpha.
some very good gap. Yeah. So 10 years is not so
that's
our
a good
generation,
question.
and then what's your hope for your children? And you say, kiddo, guys, this is what we hope you guys find. We've given you the rails.
The tools and rails. I think to understand who they are and how they can build a better society.
That's ours or theirs?
Ours.
And theirs.
It's for them to decide.
I can't
for them
speak
to
for them.
decide.
Yeah. But for me, as me,
For
I'm
you,
like,
no, this is ours.
things are going crazy. What can I, understanding who I am,
Yeah.
my community, what can I do to make things better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think for me, I think our generation's mandate, similar to what you said, is the return. Like it's strongly around self-identity. What is blackness? What's African? What does that even mean today in a contemporary world? Knowing that we are, globalized. We are not necessarily, just here. So that sense of identity, where does it come from? What does that look like? I lean towards Black consciousness because there's a confidence in knowing that you're not less than because of some institutionalized systems that have made a certain group believe that they're more powerful and another a little bit less. So for me, that's one. The second one, 100%, I think our generation's mandate is economic transformation. I think the generation before us, their job was just financially freedom. Like, some bit of, can we just, but for me, I think it's absolute economic transformation. And for wealth building, I think it's building wealth and generational wealth, like seriously, not as an individual, but as a collective. Yeah. And then the third, for my anticipation or hope for what the next generation's mandate would be is restfulness and abundance. That's how I would put it for them. Yeah, that's.
I can't add anything.
Joel, what is your generation's
What is your generation?
What she said.
and then tell us about the girl and the daughters. Yes.
What? And Alan.
Alan after.
Alan is going to close.
Yeah.
Yes, Alan.
Alan is going to close because we have said everything you've said. Well, I can't give a clear-cut answer. I suppose I have a tattoo here which is of an owl, and the reason I have that owl is the owl of Minerva, and the story behind it means that you can only know what an age means when it has come to its end. So I feel like what you're describing is the end of a certain period, and that's why I like the name arc. What we can define is what we are leaving behind. And the only thing that I think we can give to other generations, I'm reading Capital again, Marx's Capital, and there's a bit in the notes where he said that nothing that he's describing will be set for the future. That all he's saying is I'm describing the time and I'm seeing a shift from a certain mode of production to another. Because the people who are born in that mode of production will take it as a given. You won't question commodities, you won't question those things, but he could question them because he was seeing them emerge. So I think for us it's to articulate what our age means so that then the next people can pick up from that. I can't say, like the same way my father couldn't say to me, do this. All he could do was describe where he came from, the world he was in, give me some tools and say, go ahead. Alan, the last word is yours.
I usually can't do this after Joe, but since this is like a bit personal and I have experience, I think I can try. We talked about previous past optimists and now they're what? Pessimists. I think that like tells the story of my life, because my life starts as an optimist. Optimist, the world is bright, you're the future with you will be in the papers. And then my mom, single mom, did her best, was cleaning houses, and takes me to her job and tells me my back is starting to hurt, you're going to take over. So then, pessimist. Oh, this is gone. This is the way. And then from that, did that, traversed, got into all this living better and stuff. And then, like, I can say budding optimist now. Like, I'm becoming an optimist a bit. And now the message I tell my daughter enrolled into film school, thinking it will make me happy. And I told her, no, like, you don't have to do this. Like, what makes you happy and what will make you money, just do that. So I go with yours of like economic transformation, like be happy, make the money, and maybe your future will be better and you won't have the trauma that the rest of us are carrying around.
Make new mistakes.
Make new mistakes and don't repeat ours. Make new mistakes. Learn, be happy, make the money. Was for some people that may sound like OnlyFans. I mean, don't do that. But be happy, make money.
Brilliant, love that.
Goodbye, friends. Don't do OnlyFans, I suppose. Or if you're doing it, go ahead, make it your own. Thank you, ladies, for coming. I really appreciate you making the time. And for allowing Alan and I to finally have a balanced podcast. It's always us, just guys talking. Yeah. It's really a high value men, though. Cheers. Bye.
Wow. Sorry, with high value men. And that thing just